this is Catherine O'Connell and welcome to Lawyer on Air. If you are looking for inspirational stories about women in law, then this is the podcast for you. Join me and my lawyer ladies as we enjoy a glass of wine after a hard day at work and talk about the world of women in law. It's my passion to share stories of amazing legal ladies who are working as in-house legal counsel, who have law firm roles, who are leading on boards, and who are doing law differently. From time to time, I will also invite special guests on the show to share their insights on legal recruiting and tips for getting hired as a successful lawyer in Japan. I hope you will enjoy getting to know these amazing women who I am so proud to share a profession with. I'm glad you're here and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode in the Lawyer on Air podcast. I'm the host of the show, Catherine O'Connell, and I've been a lawyer in Japan for more than 20 years, and I love sharing the stories that women lawyers never tell. Today, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome a remarkable individual to the show as my special guest, Olga V. Mack. For many of my listeners who are deeply ingrained in the legal landscape, Olga needs no introduction. Her presence literally permeates both the professional realm and the digital sphere, where she effortlessly merges her insights on law and technology with an unparalleled warmth and generosity. Known for her prolific contributions to legal discourse and her unwavering support for in-house legal counsel, Olga's influence extends beyond the mere professional accolades. At the forefront of digital transformation, Olga has recently assumed the esteemed role of Gen AI Editor at law.MIT.edu, a prestigious position within the MIT Computational Law Report. A prolific writer, her columns grace esteemed publications such as Above the Law and ACC Docket, where she delves into the intricate intersections of legal tech and the future of law. Yet her brilliance does not stop there. Olga is a true luminary, a 3 times TEDx speaker, a distinguished lecturer at Berkeley Law, and the mastermind behind the captivating podcast, Notes to My Legal Self. But beyond her impressive portfolio lies a woman of depth and real authenticity. Born in Ukraine but made up of a mosaic of different cultures, Olga's personal journey enriches her perspective, which is really evident in the candid glimpses she shares into her life beyond the confines of LinkedIn. In her own words, Olga is not just made in Ukraine, but she's also a force to be reckoned with in the legal tech realm and beyond. You can check out Olga's full bio in the show notes. On this special guest episode, Olga shares all about building your brand as a lawyer and how you can utilize LinkedIn to do that. She also tells us what it takes to find your niche as a lawyer through thought leadership, as she has done in the legal tech and AI realms. We also get a quick take from Olga on ChatGPT for lawyers, and there are several drop mic moments for me as an absolute fangirl of Olga on several other topics. I am sure you will really enjoy this long and juicy episode. Let's get into it. Hello, Olga, and welcome to the show.
Hello. Good to see you.
Lovely to have you here. I'm so excited to have you, not only because you're this powerful law and tech expert, but I also just wanted to have a chat with you. I'm being very selfish in that way, but your LinkedIn bio says that you're always around for the next chapter in the big book of legal transformation. You're focusing on legal tech and trends that are shaping our future. And so that's really why I wanted to have you on today as a special guest on the Lawyer on Air podcast. To get going, I would like to ask you the same question I ask all of my lawyer guests. And that is, if we were meeting up in person, where would we be? Do you have a favorite wine bar or restaurant that you love to go to? And what would be your choice of beverage off the menu?
You know, I value people way more than I value anything else, including food. Chances are we would end up in your favorite place because I firmly believe that my guests are much more likely to be comfortable and relaxed and interesting if they are in a familiar place where they love something on the menu. So chances are we will be actually in your place. But if you actually care about what I love, it's likely going to be something Italian.
Ooh, where's your favorite Italian restaurant?
I don't have a favorite one. I mean, I love obviously Italian food in Italy. I think it's pretty good in some places in San Francisco. Tend to love to try basically any eggplant dish. I used to grow eggplants when I was growing up in Ukraine, and Ukrainians have a repertoire of things they do with eggplants. So I'm very curious what a chef can pull off with an eggplant.
Wow, that is
Aside from
cool.
that, aside from that, I am pretty open-minded. I tend to go for seasonal things that the restaurant is known for.
That is
If you,
lovely. Right, eggplants. And eggplant in Japanese is nasu, in case you wanted to know that from this part of the world. When I was back in New Zealand over Christmas, I went to a gorgeous restaurant there that does eggplant absolutely amazingly. Even one of my friends who cannot stand eggplant said it was absolutely delicious. So I'd love
well,
to
the
go.
Japanese eggplant is a little different, right? It's skinnier.
It
You bake it. You,
is.
you do it a little bit differently. I appreciate that eggplant too, though it is a very different eggplant than the one you'll see in Italy or United States.
Right. And what do you have with an eggplant? If you're having a dish or having Italian, what do you like to drink when you're having that?
I will usually follow recommendation of a chef.
Oh, that's so good. Right. And I love how you're open to anything. You're not just confined to what you think you want to do or have. You're open to their suggestions. And I think they're always suggesting really great things for us. It's cool. Thank you so much. Look, you've taken on this new role just recently. Congratulations. We're going to go to that shortly and we'll put your full bio into the show notes. And my goodness, it's a very fulsome and juicy bio indeed. But I'd love you to share a little bit about yourself before we get right into the nitty gritty of the questions. You were made in Ukraine, as I love seeing on your LinkedIn bio, and you just mentioned that. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, I specifically said made in Ukraine because that's where I was born. I'm also, I guess, Ukrainian by virtue of being born, though I had to surrender my citizenship when we moved to the United States. So I'm not a citizen of Ukraine, and Ukraine does not allow dual citizenship. And, yes, I'm Ukrainian, but I'm also actually a lot of other things ethnically. So I love this sort of pointing out where I was born, and I'm definitely standing with Ukraine. Ukraine is a very diverse place, and it has a lot of ethnic Russians. It has a lot of folks from Europe and Middle East and Asia. And I am very much a mix of all of the above. And so I like to be very clear that Ukraine is a very diverse place. It's no less diverse than, frankly, United States or any place in Europe.
Wonderful. So when you were born, you were there for a little while, but moved to the States. What happened then? Because I know round about age 13, you're in San Francisco Bay Area and you got kind of interested in tech and technology for some reason. Can you tell me how that came about? I don't know the answer to this question myself, so I'm interested to know.
Yeah, it's really hard to be in the Bay Area and not be interested in tech. I mean, it is very close to Silicon Valley and a lot of innovation that has happened in the last couple of decades. Everyone basically works in tech one way or another. And you see in innovation sort of influence society much sooner than you see anywhere else. And so it is a place where you can kind of see the future and you can see where it's trending and you can see ways you can contribute both on the building side, but also integration side and adoption side and influence on the future side. And so I observed when I was 13 when we moved that technology has a lot of impact on my community, on my views, on my trajectory, on my personal life, on my career. And I wanted to shape that course. And I wanted to be on the forefront of making sure that technology has positive byproduct and consequences for everyone. And so that's the reason of going to law school and becoming a tech lawyer by design, because I really wanted to make sure that laws and our policies and lives really benefit everyone as technology becomes part of our lives.
Oh, I love that you became a tech lawyer by design. It wasn't just random. And it certainly has been the case that you have been influencing along the way. I wonder, though, is there someone in particular, not just the fact that you were in Silicon Valley, but did anyone say, you've got to go do that? Or I'd love you to be a lawyer? Or is anyone that impacted you in that way?
Actually, law happened somewhat unplanned. Most of my life, I thought I would be an artist. I
Oh,
managed to convince my supportive parents, who are engineers, that this is a viable way for me to make a living. My parents, who knew me well enough, had a trust that I will figure my way out. When I immigrated to the United States, I was actually very interested in becoming an engineer and found myself in my college excelling on the sort of science part of it, but not really enjoying the social life implications. And, what happened to me in high school when I didn't speak English, adults like to ask silly questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a few have asked me that when I was in high school, and I happened not speak English at the time. So I like giving answers where I sort of give an answer as a matter of fact in which people react. And I just kind of learn about who they are and how they think about the world. So I really liked saying, oh, I will become a lawyer. And everyone knew that I didn't speak English. And I really enjoyed watching adults struggle with that answer because they clearly didn't want to crush my dreams. Yet they also were concerned because, you can't really be a lawyer in the United States if your proficiency in English is not just good, but excellent, like top 5% or better. So I really enjoyed giving that answer throughout high school and watch adults struggle and be uncomfortable. And then by the time I got to college and didn't really enjoy the social aspect of science, I remembered that law could be a path and started exploring it more actively. But I actually started it as a joke.
I love how you're very, very honest there, starting it as a joke. And just seeing people react to what you say, that is just magical, right? When especially adults who can't hold it back, it all shows on their face.
I
It's
mean, they try to do the right thing. They're trying to be supportive. No one wants to be the one who crushes your dreams or give you a reality check. Sometimes they will nudge and ask questions, and I will play along. Anyway, that tells you a lot about who I
it
am and how
it
I interact
does.
too.
Hey, I think you bring through your artist qualities there, through the way that you dress, the way you show up physically in the world. You love your fashion. You're often doing posts that display your inner personality. And I think you're actually generating your art qualities through that.
I think of each and every one of us as a artwork in progress.
Oh,
So,
yes.
so yes, absolutely. I think so does everyone else, just sometimes more intentionally than others.
Absolutely. So, as an artwork in progress, you definitely have done that with your new role as the Gen I editor at, is it law.mit.edu?
That's right.
And that's part of MIT's Computational Law Report. Tell us about that.
Yes, myself and a few folks at law.mit.edu have been publishing now for a while, and they have observed that law has become an increasingly interdisciplinary field, very tied to technology, but much more than technology. And when we looked around at various law reviews and publications, we noticed that whether you are required to use Blue Book or not, it is mostly walls of text. And yet, law is becoming much more computational and much more tied to technology and design, not just walls of text. And so, we wanted to have a place where everyone is welcome and welcome to use the tools where they have proficiency to express their ideas and showcase their innovation. And so the thought of publishing Gen AI related to releases and possibly more is to encourage folks who are not lawyers, who are not just writing walls of text, to be part of the conversation. And so we are welcoming submissions, for example, in developer notebooks, in videos, and even art, because we think that future of law is important to everyone. Everyone should have an opportunity to shape it. And most importantly, we in the future of law can take advantage of a much larger pool of talent to make sure that it is actually bright and exciting.
Oh, sounds like it. And there's that art word again. And tell me, it's more than just telling the art form of ChatGPT to draw you a picture, right? Come on, tell me what it is.
We are open minded. It's deliberately open and open to interpretation because I would like broad swap of ideas to influence the future of law. I put a lot of thought in with the team of describing of kind of things we're thinking, but those are just a limited sample of ideas, and I would welcome to see surprises. In fact, I challenge folks to surprise me.
Excellent, because I was going to ask you, very next question was how my guests well, not my guests, I was going to ask you how my listeners can join you on this super exciting journey. What can they do? Can they contribute writing or videos or art even to you? What do they do?
That's right. law.mit.edu/gen-AI. You will see a video of me giving instructions. You will see a hello from the team members. You will see the instructions that we put together and suggestions of where we thought you may explore. Those are just examples. You should consider exploring whatever you want to explore that you think will influence the future of law. And then, most importantly, there is the submit button. That is the only way to start the process. Definitely hit that.
Whoa, that's so good. There's the challenge out to everybody. That is amazing. Can I ask you a dumb question? What is a blue book?
Oh, what is a blue? I love this. This is not a dumb question. It is maybe a traditional practice. I don't want to call it a dumb practice, but it does definitely have a tradition. Historically, to submit a brief or anything really in the United States, you have to use rules to document case law and other citations. And lawyers use essentially what's called a blue book. It's equivalent to Chicago Manual of Style that folks use in other professions, for example. There are other similar standards as well, but Blue Book is what's used in the United States in most jurisdictions and in most law review articles and formal legal citations. And as a law student, you basically learn that art and do it manually. I did it. And I remember being on a journal at Berkeley Law, on a few journals. My favorite journal was the BTLJ, Berkeley Technology Law Journal. And we used to have this thing called blue book parties where you come on the weekend, grab yourself a slice of pizza, and then sit there making sure that all citations are properly documented according to this pretty thick blue book. And I used to say that this blue party is no party at all. The
No,
most
it doesn't sound like a party. It sounds like the social aspects of science you were talking about before. Oh, I'm actually crushing here as I hear pizza plus reviewing citations.
Yes, I did not thoroughly enjoy it. And that's, if you go to the law school in the United States, there's this thing, prestigious thing that everyone applies for which is the law review of your law school.
Yes.
And I remember I declared that I am not going to apply for that because I cannot stand any more blue book parties. I've been to parties, I know what parties are, and blue book party is no party at all. And instead, as an act of defiance, I guess, or mini revolution, I decided instead of applying for that, I decided to write 4 of my law review articles and publish in various journals in the United States. So that's what I did instead of applying for the law review.
Yay, a rebel in our midst. And that's so good. And that's obviously set you on your path for being writing many columns as you do. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted you to come onto the podcast, because I know you've got so many insights and tips on building your brand as a lawyer. Especially you are on LinkedIn, and you've chosen LinkedIn, it seems, as your channel for, showing people your thought leadership. And you're also obviously working very much within this thick jungle of legal and tech. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. And I've sent some questions across to you, and lots of them, because I couldn't stop thinking about questions for Olga. But let's just start up there. What about advancements in AI and technology that are reshaping traditional roles within law right now? What are you seeing?
I am seeing for the very first time lawyers are not just nervous, which is what they normally are when it comes to technology. I've now seen a few waves of technology. This is the first time I see lawyers excited as well. I call it
Yay.
nervous sighted. They're both nervous and excited. And I think this is new, and that I think we should hold on to this feeling of excitement because I think we have a lot of talented people who succeeded in life and their profession, and they realize one thing, that if they kind of stop doing admin grunt work, they could be happier in their professional life, possibly in their personal life, and maybe even have more free time or doing more of what's impactful. And I think that's where the excitement comes in.
It's so good. And what if people aren't excited about it right now? They're thinking, oh my goodness, listen to her speak about being nervous. That's me, but I'm not excited. I'm not excited. I am personally, but what about someone who's listening and goes, how do I get excited about this? What's a great way to get involved into tech straight off as a lawyer?
Honestly, the best way to get involved is to try things out. And there are many ways to try things out. It is all hypothetical and theoretical until you actually do it. It's kind of like, you know, I have a swimming pool, and swimming is much more exciting when I actually get into a pool and start, putting my arms one in front of another. If I actually tell you how exciting it is not nearly as exciting as you getting in and doing it yourself. That theoretical swimming is just not fun, but the actual swimming is. The same true is for technology. You just kind of have to get in, and there are many ways to get in. You can obviously try publicly available tools like ChatGPT, for example, or you can work with your vendors and be on their pilots and contribute feedback and ask for tutorials and ask for kind of ways you can try things out. So there are many ways to do it. But the important thing is stop sort of hearing and be theoretically curious and become practically curious and actually get into the pool and start swimming.
Get into the pool, right? And it's so true that this legal profession is gradually changing. It's shedding all of its layers and becoming a little bit more adaptive and trying to thrive. And I know that, to future proof our careers, as you've been saying, we've got to also stay ahead of legislation. And I know that you wrote an article recently on these topics for ACC. How lawyers should stay ahead of the curve on these AI changes, legislative changes. You mentioned, I think, about 4 things that were really critical in that article. Can you tell us what those were? Because I'd love to hear you say them rather than reading it on the paper. So that's what I'm going for.
Well, I will not summarize the entire article. I will encourage folks to find me on ACC. I am a columnist there. Fun fact, I actually helped ACC to start their digital publication. I have been their longest standing author
Woo.
and likely the most frequently published. I used to publish weekly, I now publish monthly. I am pretty sure that I've to this day contributed the most, cumulatively speaking. So I'm really proud of that platform and being part of that iconic moment. But what I love when I am in the beginning of technology is that there are no secondary sources. Again, it's both scary and exciting. It is scary because you don't have the authority to tell you what stuff means. But it is exciting because you can read the original sources and then have your own take and interpretation, and then bounce ideas with your colleagues who are trying to figure things out, and perhaps even write about it or get together with regulators and legislators to give feedback and co create with them and really kind of shape and learn and do it all together. And I love that. There's something really exciting about being in the beginning and being one of the first cohorts to read and realize that your interpretation is as good as the lawyer who've been there for 20, 30 years, that you are equally in the beginning and you can become an authority in this as much as the person next door. I find this to be a very powerful feeling.
It is, and I don't even think anyone's really thought that or said that before. You're giving us this license now to just go and do it. You can be an authority. And I really loved how you said, even before, get together with vendors and do a pilot, get them to give you a tutorial, give them feedback. And now you're saying co create with regulators. This is news to us. I'm sure it's news to many people listening. What do we do there? Do we just ask, can I use your product and give you feedback? How do we get together with regulators? Tell me a bit more about these things.
Yeah, I've been in the beginning of many technologies. AI ML is sort of one of them. Also, crypto blockchain, also sort of interest in data, frankly, interest, internet, mobile, cloud, all of those things. And when regulators and legislators put pen to paper, they do a lot of studies. For example, they ask for ideas. They often set up sandboxes. They have formal and informal conversations. And that's where you can share the industry point of view, your expertise, how it impacts your company, and really give suggestions. I find it very helpful, depending on the jurisdiction and the kind of legislation and regulation you're talking about. And I find it very powerful and empowering, really. That, I guess I'm an immigrant. When I see a line, I usually turn the other way. I've stood in many lines in my life, partially because I was born in the Soviet and lines were very prevalent there, but partially as an immigrant, you stand in many lines, documents lines. I guess those were upgrades from food lines in the Soviet. I have an aversion to lines. And so when it comes to new stuff, new direction of technology, new type of things like privacy 20 years ago, it gives you an opportunity to not stand in this proverbial professional line where somebody who has 20 years on you has more knowledge and expertise than you who just graduated from law school, for example. When I graduated from law school, GDPR came down shortly after. And I realized that me out of law school has as much experience in privacy as someone who's been practicing law 20 years. And I found it to be very powerful when a partner who'd been practicing in the reputable law for a couple of decades was asking me what I thought. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And I always found that new technologies lead to this new regulations and conversations with legislators and regulators and position folks to be in the beginning where it is basically an equal opportunity for everyone. And so that's how I see all the AI regulations and legislations that are coming out of the United States, EU, and other jurisdictions. It's powerful. That is how you no longer have to stand in line. That's how it is equal opportunity to contribute, co create, and frankly, lead the conversations and outcomes.
This is mind blowing. This is you saying, don't stand in line, don't go into hierarchy, all the people ahead of you. You have your own excellence and your own innovative ideas within yourself already because you're a unique person. So just go for it, right? You're at the beginning. You can take the beginning. And I know when you come to Japan next, where there's lots of lines, I'm going to have to get you a VIP pass.
Yeah, I am not a person who'll stand in line. If
Well
you would,
noted. Well noted. I've got it in red on my book. Is there anything else you'd like to say here about law and technology before we pop in to talk about your podcast?
whatever is helpful, I'm happy to say whatever would be useful to your audience, or we can talk about my podcast.
Well, let's talk about your podcast then, because you've just wrapped up season 6 and you are all about sharing information just as you're doing now with your insights. Tell us about your podcast, what it's called. I know what it's called, but tell everybody else and why you started it.
Yeah, it's called Notes to My Legal Self. And it started as many things. Initially, it started as a column on the Above the Law. Then I decided to not call my column that. I decided to just do a column without a nameless column, and instead do visuals that I still do. I call them Notes to My Legal Self. But then during the pandemic, I found myself being increasingly present on LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn actually almost from the beginning of LinkedIn. I practically grew up on LinkedIn and I've always been active, but what active means has changed. And it definitely changed in the pandemic. I started posting daily, sometimes twice daily, something that I thought would never happen to me. And then I realized that me writing about stuff is exciting enough, but me having conversations with others and others being part of it, either as witnesses, which is what most lawyers do. They like to be flies on the wall, or participants, which is what I love when they actually add ideas, a part of the conversation. I love it when people challenge me and frankly my guests, because look, I mean, I started out interviewing in-house lawyers and basically folks who help in-house lawyers. If you're a lawyer helping lawyers, being challenged in public is really kind of fun. And so we've had many conversations. The podcast started right at the beginning of pandemic to help in-house professionals to deal both with digital transformation and leadership that they needed to exhibit to go through this big world event. And I had done quite a few episodes, almost 100, mostly with in-house professionals, whether they're lawyers or legal operators or other professionals who help in-house lawyers thrive, basically, and companies to thrive. The recent season actually focuses on AI and branched out, not just in-house, but actually focusing on AI innovation. And the reason I did is because I realized that a lot of my followers and folks in my network really just needed more points of view and education about AI in law, both technical and business and legal. And so I've had many wide conversations on this topic. So what started out as in-house adventure has now includes other things.
It's brilliant. And any plans for season 7 to be a little bit different? Or are you really enjoying this theme of AI and points of view and education for others? And you're going to continue on that?
Yeah, so folks reach out to me, and I'm still continuing focusing on the in-house. I decided to separate in-house leadership from in-house operations. So I decided to do separate episodes on that. I will continue the AI portion, and I will also add the portion related to building the future of law. So I'm talking to a lot of innovators and founders as well. So those are the 4 categories that I'm doing in the next few seasons, largely because folks got in touch with me and shared what they find valuable and what they want to hear more of. The 5th category that I hear quite a lot about that I'm not doing just yet because I'm a little gun shy, believe it or not, is law firms. I figured if I'm just doing 4, that's enough on my plate. I'm not sure if I'm ready to do even more, but maybe.
Let's see what happens. Interesting. Law firms. And I've never really thought of Olga as being gun shy, but there we go. Let's see what happens on this space. And we'll
That
pop.
doesn't usually last very long, to be clear. It's a moment. It's usually a fleeting moment.
Exactly. And we will pop that link to your podcast in the show notes. It's really interesting you mentioned notes to my legal self, because that is absolutely the way that I found you on LinkedIn, because you wrote those notes looking like it was written on a yellow legal pad. It was so distinctive, that branding, and you just drew me in. I was sucked into Olga from the start when I saw that. And so from there, I've been looking out for you, not stalking, but just following you.
It's okay. I love being followed or stalked by you. It's all good.
And here
I
we
love it.
are. Here we are. Finally, I'm interviewing you on this podcast. But that's it, though, relationship building and connecting. But tell me a little bit about that. Why should lawyers be on LinkedIn? And I love that idea of active. You've said it's changed over the time, and now you're posting quite regularly. But tell me a little bit about that. Lawyers in Japan, I'll give you this much, less than 1% are on LinkedIn. And it's a little bit disappointing, but tell me why you think it's important to be on LinkedIn for lawyers, and how can people leverage their professional and personal reputation?
My opinion about lawyers or any professional is not really limited to LinkedIn. I looked at it broadly. I personally have been on various platforms. For example, I was much more active on the Above the Law than I have been on LinkedIn for a long time. I also have been very active on ACC well before I was active on LinkedIn. Although I have always been on LinkedIn and I've always been active relative to others, though how active folks have been has increased over time. The bar has changed. I don't have a strong opinion whether you have to be on LinkedIn because I think it serves some industries and geographies more than others. But I do think that you should be where your colleagues and customers are, whether it's a physical space, for example, a country club, or a virtual space, for example, LinkedIn or ACC or another social media platform. That really is a personal preference and circumstances. My colleagues and my customers tend to be on LinkedIn today. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. I also happen to really love LinkedIn as a platform, much more so than others. Twitter or X is just a little too uncivil for me and, anonymous. There's
Mm,
sort of random stuff, a lot of noise, and just a little too fast and furious and not professional enough.
right.
Other platforms, for example, Instagram, I love to be an observer. I consume Instagram a lot. I like following various folks that I like following and see what they create. But my customers don't really tend to be there. And frankly, my colleagues are not there as well. So I don't really create there. LinkedIn for me is a place where I feel comfortable as a professional, as an introverted professional. And I love really getting to know people who are my prospective customers or my colleagues, and then seeing them in real life and having conversation not from sort of hello, what's your name, what do you like, but hey, I know a lot about Catherine. We now have been interacting in on LinkedIn for many years. So by the time you and I will see each other in person, I don't have to ask, you know, where do you live? Like I know you're in Japan. and and I will already know that you have a podcast. And I know you serve on various boards and. So you and I will have a much more meaningful first conversation than we would have otherwise. And I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll get right down into it when we meet up actually in person. And I do hope that happens in the next 12 months. I have got the vibes out there for that to happen. What
I am feeling the vibes and sending them right back.
So it's interesting. I loved how you just described, you're a different presence on different platforms. It's okay to observe and it's okay to be consuming and not being active, but LinkedIn is where you feel comfortable. And I love that word comfortable. As a professional and just comfortable as a person to be there. Is there any kind of specific types of content or posts that you've found have really resonated well? There might be some that have gone supposedly viral, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about the ones where you posted something and maybe it wasn't even something you thought would be popular, and suddenly everyone's commenting on it and it made you almost cry.
I mean, I cry occasionally. It's not that I never cry. Um, I'm a human after all.
Exactly.
You should see me cry like a baby when the cat that I wanted to adopt, somebody else took her right when I came in.
And
I
I
became
remember you wrote about that, and I was feeling it for you. Yeah.
so I broke down right there and then. My kids never saw me cry like this. So I do cry. What I find interesting is that people want to know kind of things that are happening, whether good or bad, that are not visible, sort of behind the scenes, and they want to know kind of the choices in front of me and why I chose things and lessons I learned. I find that those sort of leadership usually on the intersection of, senior role and or technology, something that people are hungry for. And I think that makes sense to me quite a lot. I That's partially why I started on ACC and above the law. I started by interviewing other senior leaders, either general counsel or number two lawyers or senior legal operators, as I was trying to figure out how to become a general counsel myself. And what I wanted to figure out is sort of the recipe of how to become a version of them, Olga style. And so what I did, I was driving around the Bay Area and asking people for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or coffee, whatever they're willing to do with me, to have conversations. And then in exchange, I would write their profiles in various publications of the thank you and lessons I've learned. And that sort of resonated with people. And personally learned a lot in the process. And I credit that process to getting my leadership positions. And I kind of see similar things in reverse now when I share those things that are not Googleable, that are not ChatGPTable, the personal stories and struggles or choices and options and views that are not available unless you and I sit down for that drink or Italian meal. You won't know. I find that people are hungry for that knowledge and they can tell when you share something that really happened to you, that you struggled with making that decision, or it might have been an emotional decision like me losing that beautiful cat that I wanted, and how you grow through that, or maybe have an embarrassing moment and do better next time. I find that those things that are not Googleable or ChatGPTable, not publicly available, is something people really are hungry for. And I'm not surprised because that's was driving me to share knowledge in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's those intimate moments or vulnerable moments, amongst all the other really informational matters that you help people with that resonate, I believe so. I know with your posts, you typically ask 3 questions. Do you find that people respond to those questions when you ask them? You ask them in the body of your post, and then down in the comments, you ask them individually. That must be your way of doing something. And it seems to be, if you're doing it, that you must get engagement. Is that right?
Yes. And I measure engagement in a slightly different way than maybe sort of what LinkedIn gurus tell you to do.
Tell me more
Um,
about that.
yeah, because lawyers, especially in-house lawyers, which is what I think is my tribe, because I spent majority of my career being an in-house lawyer, are very discreet. They are sort of more likely to be what I do on Instagram. They're more
Mm-hmm.
likely to be watchers, lurkers, observers for various reasons. And questions like this do a couple of things. Yeah, sometimes I increase engagement on the post. I definitely get a lot more private responses, many of them in response to the questions I pose. I find that majority of my conversations actually happen privately, and that's how I tend to measure success of the post. It's basically what's happening in my DM, and sometimes I ask those questions because I want to nudge folks to think in a certain direction, because when you tell a story, as you know, you're a lawyer, me giving you facts will lead to you, the listener, who've had different experiences in a direction that may be different than the one I intended for you to go. It may trigger something else because you and I are different people, practice law differently, have different set of circumstances. I usually write a post because I want folks to consider various things that are quite specific. And questions allow to focus thinking, conversations, and reactions. And so that's partially why I put it there, is because even if you don't write your answer or even never get back to me, I want you to start thinking about the implication of what I just shared on your practice, the future of law, or the way you're satisfied with a legal career.
Yeah, it's great. And I love how you say that people are actually using those prompts to maybe not be obvious on the post and respond, but go to you personally. And when someone sends you a message and it lights up on LinkedIn, it really draws you in to reply to them, right? They've taken that time to do that. So I love that you're doing that. Is there anything on the other side of that? Maybe things that people are doing that you see that you think, they shouldn't have done that, or wouldn't it be better if they'd done it this way? And perhaps you maybe even suggest something to them. But I guess I'm getting at any common mistakes or things that we should avoid when we're on social media.
I'm incredibly accepting of various things people do, provided that they work for them and their goals. So it's a little hard to judge generally and specifically without understanding their goals. The real question is, are you reaching your audience, whatever that may be? And that may be a moving target. And it's really hard to tell from outside in. I think, however you define engagement, whether it's on your post, your DM, your business, like however you do that, if you're not seeing results, then you're not doing it right according to your definition of success. Really that simple. I don't think there is sort of an objective way to share stuff in the whole ways of LinkedIn. I think you have to be very clear about why you're doing it, why you're showing up, how you measure that success, whether it's sort of traditional likes and views, how important it is for you to quote unquote go viral, and maybe other things are more valuable. And I find when you serve lawyers, lawyers are a very specific audience. You may have to be very thoughtful and intentional about your definition of success, and then use it as a yardstick to really ask yourself, was the way I showed up today serving that goal? And if the answer is yes, then do it.
There you go. Juicy. Thank you. Is there anyone else who's someone that you follow, another thought leader or influencer or friend in your tribe out there that you'd like to give a plug for, that you follow and you get some inspiration from the posts that they put out there, their thought leadership?
Yeah, I follow you. I love what you putting out there. I think you are serving your community. I really do like people who are very clear about who they're serving, and they put out content useful for that community. It's really quite inspiring. Sometimes community is small, so the post may not be viral, but you can tell that it's useful and it resonates. I follow quite a lot of people. I find that my most interesting things for me are not necessarily from quote unquote influencers, but from people who I actually haven't heard from before, because they usually give me ideas that I wasn't thinking about. They teach me about other approaches and, frankly, other stories. It is my favorite thing to invite people to Notes to My Legal Self who never actually had been on a podcast or really never spoke publicly or written anything, because I find that those people have the most sort of fresh ideas. And I love when Notes to My Legal Self is a place that started the change in whatever community they care about.
Absolutely. Wow. Not hearing from someone you've been in touch with on the podcast. It's great. You're expanding it beyond the people that you've actually spoken to. You want to hear from people who haven't spoken up. And I think reminds me of one of the people who contacted me on LinkedIn who said, after I'd posted about leadership and about my kind of leadership was different to my boss's kind of leadership, and I didn't match that boss's leadership style, and so I was not seen as a leader. And I put this out there, and this person wrote to me and said, "Thank you so much for posting that, because I thought there was only one kind of leadership, only one style. And you made me think, there you are doing what you're doing. Yet at some point in your life, it was seen as not the style that is appropriate as a leader." And they were really happy that I opened up and said, we have these times. There are different ways to be a leader. And that really connected. And I can't forget that person's comment to me. So I feel LinkedIn has got so much potential in this way, as you're saying, the people you haven't heard from who contact you, and it can just change your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very mutual. I really see it as much more of a dialogue and a learning opportunity for me, as hopefully for others.
Exactly. I mean, you've carved out this niche for yourself as a lawyer who's talking to her tribe, mostly in-house leaders, in this intersection of law and tech and AI. If there's some lawyers out there, or even people out there, who want to carve out a niche for themselves in the way that you've done, have you got any advice for them?
I get this question a lot. This thing about kind of how do you build your personal brand? I probably give the most uninteresting answer in that I actually never set out to build personal brand. I actually still struggle with that term. I kind of think it's a little objectifying. I mean, I'm so much more than my brand. You should, if you think I'm exciting on LinkedIn, you should meet me in person.
I can't wait.
For me, it started as, I was doing various things, driving around Bay Area and interviewing people, and I wanted to share that, or building my department using various widgets and putting them together. And I wanted to find people who done this before, and I couldn't find them in my zip code. I had like really, specific challenges that I was trying to overcome, as my husband calls them, challenges of being lonely, as being the one who's doing it, not knowing anyone else who is doing the same.
Yes.
And so I started sharing this in hopes of attracting at least one person who would be interested to have the same conversation. So I've shared about things that mattered to me at the time now for almost, 20 years. And, in the process, sometimes I would attract one person, and in the process, sometimes I would attract many people. And really, in sharing what's happening to me, and in hopes to have another point of view and expedite my learning and maybe help somebody else. So that's really kind of what it was. And then I realized that it's a very powerful way to source and categorize and choose ideas. And I sort of continued doing it every step of the way. And in the process, I've become known as a person who basically shares very openly about things that are happening to me and things I'm working on and things I would like help on and things that I've learned along the way. And that resonates with people and they respond. I've never really set out to build a personal brand, let alone to have a following. I'm an introvert. I really actually sort of enjoy my own company quite a lot. But I've learned that I can really take experiences of the tribe and expedite my learning and have many more lives packed in my experiences. I essentially think that this is how, you can live more than 9 lives than my cat can. And I love that. This is why somebody like me, who is an introvert and really enjoys her own company, starts sharing, is because I see the value in doing bigger, better, faster, cheaper, and surrounding myself with people who are doing the same thing who may not be in my zip code.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just still thinking about you driving around the Bay Area and popping up with questions for people and then, delivering that back for them in an article that you wrote and shared it. And they must have been just so happy and pleased to see themselves in print because they never would have thought of, number one, submitting anything themselves about themselves, but just to see it out there and reflect back on their career or points that they talked to you about. I think that's absolutely amazing idea that you did that.
I did it when I offered it for the first 10 times. I realized that people were very flattered.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I realized that they were so flattered and grateful. And some of them were so even well known and recognized in their field. And yet nobody ever offered anything like this to them, that they were super helpful and excited to spend more time with me. And many of them are still my closest friends today.
That's it. Right? They are so happy to be asked. And as you say, flattered and grateful, and they will give of themselves. And I think that's also a key to all of what we've been talking about is engaging with people and just ask people and talk to people who you think maybe you would not talk to. Don't get in line, right? Don't get in line.
Do not get in line. And most importantly, the reason it actually kind of started was because, everyone tells you to get yourself a mentor. And so I found myself thinking about this. I never felt like I needed one. I was doing just fine. But I was like, okay, maybe everyone tells me I need to get a mentor. So I should get myself one or a couple. And I found two things. I found that when I was like going to various places like ACC, talking to folks that I just met, and then asking them to be my mentors, they gave me this funny look, like like kind of look a guy would give you if you ask for intimacy on the first date, like kind of what's wrong with you look. And so that became super awkward very quickly. So I stopped asking. And so I was trying to figure out a way to do it in a less awkward way. And I wasn't sure because I also have propensity for being awkward. Was it me or was it my approach? That happened. And then the other thing happened. I was in this big company and they had this formal mentorship program. And I was assigned this very well-known lawyer, highly regarded in his field, to be my mentor. And I was, I guess, sort of excited. Although I realized that he and I have nothing in common, I sort of flagged this issue to somebody who did the assignment, and they said, Olga, you will learn a lot more from people different than you. And there's all
Mm.
the studies that you should learn from people different than you because otherwise you systematically limit your learning. And I said, great. And so I was part of this program for the 6 months, and this gentleman and I never actually talked. And I wasn't sure if I should approach him, and I was worried about being awkward again. And then we ended up being in the elevator together, going down from the 20th floor to the first floor. And then he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I guess I have to mentor you." I said, and I'm thinking, thank God I don't have to ask for it because that would be awkward. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And he says, well, here's my tip for you. He says, when you travel, make sure you bring an extra suit because if you spill stuff all over yourself, you'll have a second one. And I'm thinking, well, thank you so much.
So much.
And I got out from that conversation extraordinarily confused because, first of all, I am awkward, but I'm not sloppy. I almost never spill stuff all over me. Second of all, I didn't think that this gentleman was particularly well dressed. And as you noted, I put a lot of thought in the way I put myself together. So the source of that advice is not exactly what I envisioned from our conversation. And so, from a few awkward conversations to this elevator ride, I decided that if I need to mentor up, so to speak, there has to be a different approach. And so that's why I ended up writing.
What an experience.
I am sure he would be a fantastic mentor
I'm sure he's fantastic.
for somebody else, but I don't believe I needed mentorship in how to dress.
Maybe you needed to be coming down from the 40th floor to the first floor and you could have got another really great tip in there. But his tip is actually very good, to carry an extra pair of clothes in case something happens. Maybe not if you spill on something on it, but if your bags don't turn up or something like that.
Catherine, I am a good packer. I bring enough clothes and I know how to shop.
I know you do. I can see. Well, let's just switch gears a little bit to one last question, because I know lots of people have asked me about ChatGPT for lawyers, and you talked a little bit about it before, but what are your thoughts on ChatGPT? Are there any things that we should be careful about, ethical considerations? I know obviously we can't trust it. It's like a little intern that does some work for us, but doesn't always get it quite right. There's been cases in the States with citations for cases being absolutely fictitious. I'd love to hear what your wisdom is on ChatGPT.
Yeah, I wrote an article about it. It is on ACC. I actually highly recommend reading it. It's one of the more popular writings I've done recently, and I've done a lot of presentations related to this. The short answer is the way I think about ChatGPT is not that different than the way I think about Google.
Mm.
It's, you have to understand that you have to be very careful what you put in because it keeps track of information you put in. And that may implicate your confidentiality that you may owe to your clients in your jurisdiction. And if you actually practicing law, you must be careful in the way you rely on the output. And all of that is not that different from Google.
Absolutely.
If many lawyers Google, in fact, I think every lawyer Googles. I think that's where many of them start. That's not where they end, but many of them start the sort of basic, research or inquiry or educating themselves there. If they're going to be filing a piece of paper with the court or giving legal advice, they will and need to do research. They will probably use a reliable source, whether it's a book or actual proprietary information, but something that is citable and reliable. Again, not all that different from ChatGPT. So I actually essentially think of ChatGPT as a 2024 version of Google. I do recommend that lawyers use it, or frankly, other proprietary tools. But what I do recommend, remember that going to for a swim analogy.
Yes.
That's how you get in. ChatGPT is an easy way to get in because it's free, just like Google. But before you get in, it helps to have sort of a thought. and a pause and do this intentionally, just like you getting into the pool. For example, most people will not dive their head first in the deepest part of the pool, especially if it's the first time. Maybe, dip your toes, maybe come in from the shallow side. So what I invite folks to do is to think through their practice in a very intentional way, like everything you do and everything lawyers do does not involve practicing law. We do a lot of administrative stuff that doesn't have information of our clients or require formal citations that are correct and to the sources that exist. We do a lot of administrative stuff, we do a lot of business development, we do a lot of summarizing stuff that happened in the world, we do a lot of marketing, we do a lot of stuff. And I invite folks to inventory everything they do, from admin stuff to routine stuff to something that resembles the practice of law to something that is definitely practice of law. For example, giving legal advice, helping negotiate contracts, filing those papers with the court. Those are definitely unequivocally practice of law. And realize that this is a continuum of risk. Anytime you send a summary of a decision to a client that is publicly available, that you can ask ChatGPT to summarize and write in whatever English or French or German that you like, whether it's formal or informal, 2 paragraphs or 20, or if you like to do it in Pirates English, it can do this for you. And you can do a few different versions of it depending on the client, or you can even do a few different versions to do A/B testing and become better at marketing your practice. This will absolutely save you a lot of time, and it will be absolutely fine because you're using publicly available information. You're not using it for practicing law, and you'll find that you can automate a lot of parts of your legal practice, essentially. As you move on that continuum of risk, basically towards actually practicing law, you probably, and not probably, you must start thinking about accuracy and confidentiality of clients. And that's probably where you should start considering proprietary tools, something that lawyers have been now using for a while. And talk to your providers and ask exactly the same questions about confidentiality and accuracy and all of this. I think it's a fair question to ask proprietary vendors who use AI. How do they make sure that confidentiality of your searches is respected? How do they make sure that accuracy is actually there? Because you now have an increasing number of vendors actually using AI and generative AI specifically, and they all have to deal with these problems, and there are solutions to deal with it. So all I'm saying is that look at your practice, inventory from low risk to high risk. If it's not practice of law and you're not putting clients' confidential information, and if you ask ChatGPT to do various things that it's really good at, like summarizing a document or working with a document or translating from legalese to 8th grade English, it's really good for that. But as you start practicing law, you should not only consider using proprietary tools, but you should do due diligence on the vendors to make sure that their practices help you comply with your ethical obligations in your jurisdiction.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll get the reference to that article from you as well for sharing with everybody in the show notes. Well, I'm going to ask you a few cute questions at the end here to wind down.
Cute questions. Let's do it.
Cute ones, just 3. Is there a famous person or celebrity that you have not met that you'd love to meet?
Oh, there's just more than one. Really just many. I tend to really enjoy folks in other fields like art that I just think are very interesting and think outside the box. So I would have loved meeting Caravaggio, who is someone from Renaissance Italy who pioneered this interesting technique in painting, who was himself a character and and didn't live very long, but did some incredible things and have influenced the course of history in his ways. I tend to like the folk who change the way we look at things. Pablo Picasso, for example, would be an interesting person to meet, not because I really love his art, or Salvador Dali, not because I really love their art. I just think they were really good at forcing the world to notice them and change the course of history. Some call it marketers, good marketing. I just think they were very compelling in the way they package themselves. And I think that provides quite a lot of learning for professionals today. I think I can learn a lot from a lunch like that.
Wow, I never thought you would say that about Picasso and other art. That
Which
is
part?
amazing. Wow, it's no just that, they have been marketers. They've packaged themselves. They've put things out there that have helped us to change the way that we view things. That bit I know at the end there, but just the way that you've explained it is very interesting. And I can imagine you in Italy or other countries in Europe driving around and interviewing them and then producing those articles, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, the second question is, and I was going to ask you what item on your desk or bedside cabinet in your home inspires you, but before we came on today, you were on camera and behind you, you had some beautiful items. Maybe it's those things. What is it in your house that inspires you, and why is that?
Well, I collect things that radiate a love of the creator. They tend to be handmade, but don't have to be. You can tell that some object have a thought. So I have a lot of things, for example, from, like I have various bowls from Africa and Mexico and Asia, that various things that were gifted to me or I bought or somehow came into my life. And that's because I felt that the the love and the thought of the creator shines through. I really love that in objects, and frankly, I love that in people when their work speaks for itself and the love and the thought shine through. But my favorite object in my room are various representations of jaguar. I happen to really love jaguars, and somebody recently suggested that they may be my spirit animal. I think I'm inclined to say yes to that. So I have a few masks and papier-mâché representations of jaguar that I can't stop looking at.
Ooh, I love it. They speak to you, right? I mean, I am the same when I travel somewhere. I usually buy something from an artist that has really spoken to me and I can feel them. When I was in Bosnia, I did that in Dubrovnik and Florence and other places that I visited. It's always been something like that. So when I've got that item with me, it really inspires me and I think about the person who I chatted with when I bought the item. So I love that. And Jaguar. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I for
Mm.
me, I realized I was traveling through various parts of Yucatan, and there are legends, you know, of
Mm.
Mayans around jaguars. They essentially saw them as human equals, which I
Yeah.
find really fascinating when humans look at animals and consider them to be equal. I personally like them because, they're very colorful and expressive. I mean, they're just beautiful cats. They're colorful, and I love that about them. They're strong, they're fast, they're very efficient, and then they are very good swimmers.
There you
There's
go.
there's some of the few cats that are exceptionally good at swimming, and swimming is actually a big part of my life. I grew up with my father, who was a professional swimmer. I probably learned to swim before I learned to walk, and my best childhood memories was on top of my dad's back as he was doing butterfly across the swimming pool. So that fact that they are swimmers kind of sealed the deal for me.
Yeah, because they're not really, cats don't really like the water, do they? So that's very interesting. I love that story you just told about your dad. And I think you've just stolen my third question, which was what's something about you a lot of people don't know. But putting it in an Olga way of saying things, what's something that's not on your LinkedIn profile?
The fun fact is that my high school had a view of a Golden Gate Bridge, which at the time when I moved to the United States was completely lost on me. The 13-year-old who was sort of stressed out, not speaking English, immersed in this, what I thought was very odd culture, and completely kind of lost. But now, a few decades later, I look back and I think, oh, isn't that the luckiest thing in the world? Like, how lucky do you have to be to have a view of Golden Gate Bridge every day for 4 years? You go to high school. And the reason I tell you that story, the reason it's a fun fact, it took me a little while to realize how fortunate my childhood was, though at the time I was eagerly felt sorry for myself. And I realized that I really ought to enjoy even difficult things as they're happening, as opposed to, 20, 30, 40 years later. Every time I look at Golden Gate Bridge, for me, it's a reminder that no matter what I'm going through life, I should enjoy it today because I will enjoy it 10 years later or more.
Well, you enjoy it now, and you will enjoy it 20 to 30 to 40 years later.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, I know there's more, but I'm going to say thank you so much, Olga, for coming on the show, for sharing your insights. I've loved every single story you've told, and I don't want to finish, but we have to. Can people connect with you? I'm presuming on LinkedIn, right?
I now have so many followers that you can only follow me.
Oh,
So I won't be able to accept your invitation. However, I allowed folks to write to me without any gates. That's a very unusual move because you usually have to be a connection or you
mm.
have to pay various tokens to write to somebody, which usually creates speed bumps in who can contact you because he can no longer connect with you. And I really don't want people to pay to write to me. I allowed basically anyone in the world to write to me, and I do my best to answer it. So follow me for updates that I share daily. And if you want to actually write to me, you can do that, and you won't have to pay LinkedIn to do that.
Woo, there you go. Well, everybody, if you enjoyed this episode, and I know if you've been listening right to now, you obviously have been enjoying it, please do write to us and let us know what you enjoyed. What were your biggest takeaways today? Head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, or you can hop on the website and actually leave us a voice message, 1 minute of your voice telling us what you loved. Go ahead and share this episode with colleagues, people in the office, your tribe, as Olga called it, and just let people know that they can also live a lawyer extraordinaire life just like Olga. That's all for today. See you on the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of Lawyer on Air. I really hope that you were inspired by the story you heard and that you discovered something new about women in the law. Please subscribe to the show so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you can think of even just one person to share this episode with, that would make my day. I invite you to connect with me to talk more. Jump on over to LinkedIn or Instagram where you can find me, or send me a message via my website contact page. That's all from me today. I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Lawyer on Air. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.